Welcome aboard the Ark.
This week, I am bringing you the Ark Files. That's what I'm calling it. Jordan Peterson just released something on the Daily Wire where he talks extensively about the Ark and everything that's going on with it, from how it was born to where it's going next. So I am bringing you a breakdown of everything that I've learned about the Ark. Now, of course, I'm not going to release a 3-hour episode, so I'm going to break these into chunks. I'm going to try and stay at like 15-minute tops. I know you guys don't like your videos too long, so I am going to try and be mindful of that. In this video, you're about to see how the Ark came into existence, the thought process of the Ark and the people within it, and why they chose London as their first meeting place.
One of the things we encountered continually was the puzzled questioning from especially the Eastern Europeans, although this was also the case in Scandinavia, about just what the hell was going on in the West. So that was probably most acute in countries like Albania. And so Albania, just so you know, a small country, was probably the worst of the Soviet-era countries in terms of tyranny and oppression. And that was a damn hard contest to win.
The Socialist Republic of Albania begins with the Levizia Națională Çlirimtare, or the National Liberation Movement, a far-left organization of partisans who were fighting against the Nazis during World War II. The National Liberation Movement was basically the Communist Party of Albania plus a few others who were there just to fight the war. This movement comes to power in 1944 after they liberated the country, and right from the get-go a frontman emerges. Enver Hoxha, the first and for the next 40 years the only secretary of the Albanian Communist Party. As soon as the movement comes to power in November 1944, they start doing what communists always do: kill everyone who disagrees with them.
And Albania was ruled by brutally punitive dictatorial structures for, well, the entire post-war period up until 1989. And to say it was bad is to say almost nothing. All these Eastern Europeans, they suffered under the brutal rule of the radical left ethos from 1945, sometimes earlier, until 1989. And then, of course, underwent quite the period of catastrophic collapse after that. And they're looking over at the West thinking, what in the world are you people doing, toying with these ideas when the evidence is crystal clear that they devastated the lives of 100 million people, took the lives of 100 million people, devastated the lives of far more, and laid our countries to waste. Don't you understand?
I've experienced those exact same sentiments from someone from Cuba and someone who's actually directly from Albania. And we really have to start listening to those people. Because when everything started to kick up about 3-4 years ago, they were like, this is how it starts. I mean, like my buddy's wife, she's Cuban, and she was very adamant. She's like, this is how it starts. They require you to do 1 or 2 things that seem very simple, but for some reason it's like almost like a paywall they put in front. Like, do this thing and you can have this, and don't worry about it. And she was like, this is how it starts. And we really have to start listening to those people, because those people who have gone through that, who have had family that have gone through that, they're not like us in the West. They have a spidey sense that goes off whenever this stuff starts to creep in. You should really listen to them.
And so I'd certainly thought the same thing being in the West. And it was very interesting to see that echoed by the people whose lives had included sojourns under those systems of oppression. Now, you might say, if you're cynical, well, you only met conservative people and they were just echoing back to you what you wanted to hear. And that's actually not true, because lots of the people I met were disenchanted liberals or leftists who were not left enough to be enamored of the communist regimes, let me say, or who had also been canceled and mobbed by the new woke tyrants. And so I don't think I was seeing a non-representative sample, although admittedly, only the people who would talk to me did. And the other thing people told us, Tammy and I, continually was that they felt like voices crying in the wilderness. But after we'd been in about 6 countries, we thought, well, every place we go, people say the same thing. They're appalled by what's happening on the culture war front, especially with regard to the radical left. They can't believe these ideas are making the incursions that they're making. And they feel absolutely isolated in their attempts to do anything about it. But when you go to 8 countries and 30 people in each country tell you that, you think, well, why aren't people coming together, let's say those who occupy the moderate center, whether they happen to be conservative or classically liberal, why aren't they coming together in some international manner to discuss exactly this problem? Is there no overarching structure of communication that would make that possible? So then I started thinking about, well, maybe we should organize such a thing and bring people together for a conference somewhere in Europe, maybe in North America. Bring people who are centrally inclined, and that would be the vast majority of people, together so that they could share best policies and share their ideas about what they've done in their own country that might be extremely useful if other countries duplicated it, and to develop a vision that would be an alternative to the globalist, woke, utopian nightmare that threatens to engulf us all.
Creating these atmospheric rivers and the rain bombs and sucking the moisture out of the land and creating the droughts and melting the ice and raising the sea level and causing these waves of climate refugees predicted to reach 1 billion in this century.
If we don't change course, we will have hundreds of millions of people falling back into poverty. We have tens of millions probably dying, possibly of hunger.
I couldn't tell if Klaus was like excited about the millions of people dying of starvation, or if he was like sad about it, or maybe he was just like, that's not enough. He's like, we got to get into the billions when it comes to this starvation thing, guys. We got to hike energy up. We got to hike the price of energy up. How are we going to do this? This is the type of thing that Dr. Peterson's talking about. It's scare tactics. And I'm not going to say that, when it comes to climate, that it's all just a farce. I definitely would not say that. But I will definitely say that what we just saw, hamming it up a little bit on the part of Al Gore, really hamming it up. It's like, okay, we get it. We get it. You want everybody to feel like you feel. You want everybody to be scared on a level that you feel is sufficient. We understand.
And we started to talk. We've met 3 different times in person, between 5 and 20 people. And, well, what did we think about?
Now we're about to get into the mind state, the thought process when it comes to the ARC, how they're trying to think about, I don't want to say reshaping the world. I want to say establishing responsible citizenship. What questions have to be asked, and what are the answers? And I really like the way that Dr. Peterson approaches this. And when I say Dr. Peterson, I should be saying the whole alliance, everybody that's involved. They are approaching this with a very level-headed thought process.
Well, we thought about what we would like to have happen on the international front if we could have what would be best. And not what we think is best, but what would be best, even how to construe what would be best. We decided that we would actually approach this by asking a sequence of questions rather than by delivering a sequence of answers.
Now, here's the thing. There's many things in this arc that if they can stay true to, this will be a revolutionary alliance. And this is one of them. If they can really stay to these questions and really consider what we have to say in regards to the answers to these questions, this is going to be one of the best things to happen in a very long time. I won't compare it to anything. And that's only if they can. Now, I'm not just sitting here being like, oh, Dr. Peterson, he could do anything. This is a very hard task. This is an international Consortium. So you're not just talking about the 38 million people in Canada and the 300 or 400 million people in America and all of the people in Europe. You're not just talking, like, you're talking, this is a very large number of people that you're giving access to these questions. So to actually consider them all, which they do have a way of doing that. I'll talk about that in a later video because I don't have time right now. But if they can actually consider each one of us the way that I'm hoping they can, this is going to be something just incredible. And also, I'll just compare it to the WEF real quick. No questions asked with the WEF. None. I know I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I'll keep saying it until people are very aware of what the WEF has going on. They're not asking us not one thing.
And we decided that we wanted to take a decentralized approach, which meant trying to get as much input from the public as possible. And we're trying to build that into the architecture of the project. And that we wanted to put forward a series of questions rather than a series of propositions about how the world would have to be. And that we were also going to avoid entirely any apocalyptic notions, refusing to accept in principle the notion that everything is such an emergency that all the power should be ceded to a centralized committee to save the planet, let's say. It's like, yeah, we don't buy that. It's not like there's any shortage of emergencies confronting us, because there are certainly plenty of them. Whether that means that we should run around in a panicked, delusional state and centralize power in the hands of a small, hypothetically omniscient elite, which is a completely different matter. We'd rather rank order the problems and address them like wise and calm people, and wise people remain calm even in a crisis. And they certainly don't use the crisis to leverage their own grip on power. Never let a crisis go to waste. It's like, yeah, that's especially true if you're trying to clamber up the power hierarchy and take all the control for yourself. We're not interested in that. Probably we're interested in that to the degree that we're all still unrepentant narcissists, and everybody's got a little bit of that in them. But I tried to gather people around the table who were sensible enough not to want that, partly because they already had pretty productive lives, and partly because they were wise enough to know that that was a disaster in the making.
Wow. So that's a level of honesty that I'm not used to. I doubt you are either, from any politician or unelected official. Because when we're talking about the ARC to the WEF to the WHO, like, all these people are just unelected officials that are just, coming for the most part. Some of them are in government, but you know what I mean. No one elected Klaus. No one elected whoever the head of the WHO is. Nobody elected Jordan Peterson. So for him to have that type of honesty is good, and it also makes it so you and I should keep an eye out for that. It's like he's in the hopes that no one who's seated at this table is going to want that type of thing. But he's aware that there's some people, even himself, that may end up turning that way. And we have to keep an eye on that as well. So, respectable honesty. So, anyway, let's talk about why they chose to start in London.
Started to formalize this with some of the people that I knew in the UK. I was interested in doing it in the UK partly because the UK has already decided that they're not exactly part and parcel of the globalist utopian scheme, even at the European Union level. And there's a pretty strong free speech and individuality ethos in the UK, rivaled only by the US, I would say, on the world stage. And England is also halfway between Europe and the US, and so not such a bad meeting place, and London is an attractive city. And I had been working with people on the free speech front in the UK, so that seemed promising. And I sat together with a number of people, all of whom are going to announce their participation in this project very soon, on their own time and in their own voice.
So to me, this actually makes a lot of sense. Now, you have to think about it. Jordan Peterson is from Canada. In Canada, the government, if you haven't looked into it, the government in Canada is not fond of Dr. Peterson at all. I mean, to the point where he said a bunch of things about their prime minister, which is basically like Canada's president, if you don't know. So he said some stuff about Trudeau, and then ended up getting his license potentially pulled away from him, like just within days of each other. So there's a bit of a correlation there. Government's not really fond of him. Then the US, constant protests when it comes to Jordan Peterson. People are always up in arms about Jordan Peterson. The majority loves him, but there's this other part that doesn't quite. And when he's bringing up something that kind of rivals the WEF, it's like maybe that's not the place to be either. The UK, on the other hand, like he said, he's been working with people in regards to freedom of speech in the UK. He goes there quite a bit. He likes their ethos towards freedom of speech, even though like currently, government-wise, it may not be the best. Their ethos overall, like in history, is really great towards freedom of speech. Makes a lot of sense. The thing that I found very interesting, though, I have this on my phone. I'm not going to pull it up on the screen because I think I'm going to do a different video about this because I'm not quite understanding what I'm seeing, is basically this company, the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship Limited. I found the actual, like, the thing that you do to, like, register a business. I found it. And this was started in 2016. So December 12th, 2016 is when they first started this. And then it says here, January 19th, 2017, they appointed Mr. Oliver Plunkett as secretary, then terminated him on the 19th. And there's just a bunch of other stuff that I don't quite understand, so I don't want to put too much out there. But yeah, this business was registered as like in 2016, which is really, really odd to me. And it was under a different name. I'll find what that original name was, but it was a different name. So this has been in the thought process of someone for a very long time. So that was the thing that I found very, very interesting. But other than that, guys, I don't want to go too long. Like I told you, I'm trying to make this digestible. I know you don't want to watch a 3-hour video on everything I found out, but that was the last interesting thing. So when it comes to the Ark, there's a lot to be known. There's a lot that I found out. So I'm going to be dropping another video about this stuff very soon. We're going to be covering a bunch of different topics and probably another video with a bunch of different topics. And I'm just going to do that until I've given you every piece of information I have on the Ark. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you again for 30,000, and I'm out.